Join the board of directors. Now, please turn to page 317. Page 317. Now we're going to see how the same dynamic functions in Torah. Because I'm going to suggest to you that what the Torah is in this week's Torah portion is a meditation on the creation of political narratives. A great deal of the Torah is a meditation on political narratives, but this one is the most, well, maybe not most, maybe the second most. The one on King David's a little bit more. Ready? Everybody got Torah? Page 317, Parsha Shemot. Ready? Ve'ele Shemot b'nei Yisrael abayim Mitzrayim et Yaakov ishu beito ba'u. These are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob, each coming with his household. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Judah, Yisachar, Zvulun, Binyamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. The total number of persons who were of Jacob's issue came to 70, Joseph already being in Egypt. Stop. What have we just been told? Something profoundly important has just been said. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, who are these people? Sons of Jacob. Except, that's how you read it in the Torah. If you're a Jew, an Israelite, living 1,000 years after this event, after the Exodus of Egypt, if you're an Israelite living, let's say, in Babylonian exile, as this book is being put together, what are those the names of? Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda are the names of tribes. Tribes. And they are disparate tribes. The tribe of Dan and Naphtali are way up in the north. The tribe of Judah and Shimon are way down in the south. What are we to each other? If I told you a story about my Uncle Sam and his 50 kids, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Connecticut, Alaska, I'm trying to do this alphabetically and I'm not very good at this, right? Colorado, you'd say, oh, I get it. What are we being told? Jews, what are we to each other? Here we are by the waters of Babylon, and we're weeping, and we're trying to form a community here. And one of the questions is, what are we to each other? The Babylonians have a narrative. The Babylonian narrative is, you are all subjects of the Babylonian emperor. Forget this Jewish stuff. There is no Jewish anymore. We destroyed your land. We destroyed your temple. Your God has rejected you. You are not Jews, Judeans. You are not members of the Israelite people. You are Babylonians. And the Jewish community sat down and created a counter-narrative. And the counter-narrative was, what? What are we to each other? We are mishpacha. Before we were tribes, we were brothers. Brothers meaning we have a blood tie. What unites us is ethnicity, which means we are bound together as a family. What's your responsibility to your family? What responsibilities are implied when I say we are family? If there's a stranger on the street, you treat him differently than you treat your family. Yeah, you're nice to him, that's what, right? What responsibilities are entailed, are implied when I say we are family to each other? Mutual support and protection. What? We take responsibility for each other. You help one another. I am a Jew living in Encino, California. What am I to some Ethiopian tribesman? Except that Ethiopian tribesman says Shema Yisrael in the morning. Even though we may look very different, I'm short, white, and fat. He's tall, thin, beautiful, and black. We're mishpacha. I owe him something. He owes me something. We're connected to each other. The first statement says, look, whatever you are in the Babylonian Empire, whatever you are in the world, you are family with each other. This is a family connection. Now, there is an advantage and a disadvantage to defining a political identity as a family. What's the advantage? It has a deep emotional resonance, right? Blood. We are of the fatherland. We are blood. There's a deep emotional resonance. What's the disadvantage? What's the disadvantage? What? You can't get in. You're either born into this ethnicity or you're not. You can hang with us, but you'll never be one of us. You will always be a son-in-law. Anyone here, don't raise your hand, a son-in-law? You know what it's like being a son-in-law? Right? Like, they love you maybe, you know? I mean, they're nice to you. You took their daughter off their hands, and yet they always look at you and wondering, she could have done better. She could have. That other guy was so much cuter, and he's a lawyer now, you know, a doctor, he's a rabbi, you know, and he ends up with this schlub, you know, my God. You know, being a son-in-law, and you sit at the table and they start talking about their camping trip to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and they're all laughing. It's the most wonderful story. Oh, I remember the trip, and you don't know what the hell they're talking about because you've never been to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. You weren't there. You don't share the internal language of the ethnos. You can't join an ethnicity. So experiment number one, to try to define what we are to each other and to create a community based on a narrative, and the narrative is we are family. All right, let's stop a second, take a breath. You had a question. You sure? Someone else had a question. Billy. This is what this is. There's all storytelling, right? We're experimenting now with alternative stories. The book of Shemot is going to experiment with alternative stories because it's trying to find the Israelite or the Jewish story. What's the Jewish story? Right? You ever have non-Jewish friends who ever ask you, why are you people so like cliquish? Why are you so what binds you together? What makes you Jewish? What makes you don't go to synagogue, you know, you don't pray. Yeah, I'm a Methodist. I go to temple, I go to church. You know, I know what being a Methodist is, right? I'm a Dodger fan. I know what that is. I go to Chavez Ravine. I wear a blue cap. I overpay, you know. I know what that is, right? We just had one. We're going to have a very interesting political narrative coming up soon, right? The Chargers are moving to Los Angeles. They're going to ask for converts. You can join the convert, you know, Charger Nation, right? And the question is, can you convert? You know, are they going to let you in? Are they going to want you? Are you going to want them? I mean, but see, this question, what binds us? What binds us as people? Answer number one, we're family. We're mishpacha. You're sitting with your parents, so be nice. Stand up straight, comb your hair. Michael. Right, so you had a problem. Here was the problem. You had many problems. So in 586 BCE, before zero, the Babylonian Empire, a great Mesopotamian power, came and conquered the Middle East. In order to conquer the Middle East, you have to conquer the highway between Mesopotamia and Egypt. We live on that highway. I mean, God really made a mistake. You know, he put us right on that highway, right on that highway. So the Babylonians come and they demand tribute. We gave them tribute for many years, and eventually we rebelled against them. And when you rebel against the Babylonian Empire, he has a way of taking out his temper, and he came and destroyed Jerusalem. Okay? Destroyed the country. Takes the upper classes of Jerusalem back to Babylon and settles them there. That's how you pacified a land. You took people off their land back to the imperial capital, and you settled them in the imperial capital, and you figure that within a generation, separated from their land, separated from their language, separated from the community of their people, separated from their gods, they will assimilate into the empire. They will become good, full-fledged Babylonians. That's what every other people of the Middle East did, except you people. You stubborn Jews. You people sat down by the waters of Babylon, and when you were finished crying, you created a strategy for maintaining a national identity in exile. Nobody had ever done this before. Very few people even do it since, maintaining a national identity far away from your homeland. Think about all the really good Italian Americans left. 3, 4 generations. When I was a when I was a student in New York, we used to go to Little Italy, and there were restaurants in Little Italy that were actually run by Italians. Now you go there, and all the restaurants in Little Italy that are left, that are Italian restaurants, what? What are you going to say? Yeah, they're all Chinese, right. Right. The Chinese people moved into the neighborhood and bought up all the restaurants. It's good Italian food, but it's cooked by Chinese people, right? Because Italian-American identity is gone, right? You remember The Godfather is all about Italian, the movie is about Italian-American identity. But there is no substantial, because separated from Italy, separated from the language, intermarrying, intermingling, and within 3 generations, there's no Italian-Americans anymore. It happens. Irish-Americans, right? Except on March 17th, nobody's an Irish. There's no Irish-American culture. March 7th, is that March 17th? Yeah, that's Yontif, right? That's St. Patrick's Day, right? Yeah, everybody wears green, drinks Guinness, you know, and that green bagels, right? Well, because you intermarry, right? You get a sushi burrito, galat kosher. That's what happens when you intermarry. That's a beautiful image of what happens to ethnic culture in an imperial place. That's what's supposed to happen to us. The question is, why didn't it happen? And the answer is this: because the community sat down and reformulated its identity and said, we're not a polity, we're not a political, we're not a country on a land with a king and an army and a flag, we're a faith community. First, he said, we're a family. Now we'll see what comes next. All right, there was another question. Another question? Okay, ready? Back in the text. Ready? Everybody good? The number of persons that were Jacob's, there were 70. 70 is a good round number because it's 7, which is the number of completion, times 10, which is the number of everything. Joseph being in Egypt, Joseph died and all of his brothers and all that generation, which means the generation when we are actually family is gone. But the Israelites were fertile and prolific. They multiplied and increased greatly, so the land was filled with them. Paru v'yishritzu. A lot of Exodus refers back to Genesis. The language of Paru v'yishritzu v'yirbu is Genesis language. We were unusually prolific, cosmically prolific. And then here's the beginning of the next narrative. Ready? Verse 8. Vayakom melech hadash. A new king arose over Egypt, who did not know Joseph. What do you mean he didn't know Joseph? Why is that important, and what does it mean? Come on. Why is it important, Lane? What did Joseph do for Egypt? He saved Egypt. Joseph saved Egypt. Why are all these Jews living in my land? Because the guy who saved the land was one of them. That's why, right? What are you Jews doing here? He didn't know Joseph. He didn't know the story of how Egypt was saved by this guy, right? Now, why doesn't he know it? He doesn't know it because he was a bad student of history. He doesn't know it because he's a different ethnicity, because the Hyksos or the Hittites ruled Egypt and they got overcome, and these are the native Egyptians again. He didn't know it because he didn't want to know it. Is there history that a leader doesn't want to know? Can that happen? In other words, when I create my political narrative, can I be selective about the history that I put behind it and leave out certain rather very crucial facts about how that history came to be? Yes. That's how political narratives are shaped. He didn't want to know. Yes?
Joseph amassed all the wealth.
That's another thing he did.
Now he wants to believe that
It's divine right. That it always was mine. That it always was mine. Please. Well, in a word, yeah. See, you guys schlepp me into these politics as I'm trying so hard. Yeah, they had these little turbans, these red turbans that said, make Egypt great again, right? That's right, Right. Don't ask. All right. And so what does he see? He sees things differently. What have the Israelites been doing up till now? What are they doing in Egypt? They're living in Egypt, right? Now, there are different ethnicities here. The Egyptians are Egyptian. The Israelites are Canaanite. They're Semitic. The Egyptians are farmers. What are the Israelites? Shepherds. Shepherds and farmers never get along. Why? Because sheep eat crops. Okay? And the idea of a shepherd is it's not just that they don't get along, they're an anathema to the farmers of Egypt. There's a terrible sense of disgust. They don't want to be with each other. And he said to his people, look at the speech, ready? Vayomer, it's verse 9. Vayomer alamo, he said to his people, Hine am b'nei Yisrael rav v'atzum mimenu. The first time the people Israel are called an am, which means nation, is here, the king of Egypt. Am b'nei Yisrael, right? Rav v'atzum mimenu. They're too many and they're too strong for us. They're a threat to us. They're a problem for us. Havanit malo. Let us be chacham. Let us be wise. Let us be shrewd in dealing with this people. Now, empirically, if you were CNN, would you have reported that the Israelites were a threat to the Egyptians? Probably not. Probably you would have reported the opposite, that the Israelites were actually a boon to Egyptian prosperity because the Israelites could carry on caravan trade with everybody in the region. You would say open borders are good for Egypt. Free trade is good for Egypt. But the king of Egypt don't see it that way. Or he doesn't want his people to see it that way. Because one of the ways that you form a nation, that you form a sense of national identity, is by dividing us from them. If I can't get you to recognize who us is, let me point out who a them is. Now we have clear borders. There's us and there's them. There's the blessed and the cursed. The ones who belong and the ones who don't belong. The ones who contribute and the ones who are freeloaders. The children of light, the children of darkness. Binary thinking is one of the most primary human mental processes. When we were little kids, anybody here ever been a little kid? We played cops and robbers. In my day, we played cowboys and Indians. That's not PC anymore, right? Cops and robbers, cowboys and Indians, Dodgers and Giants. Okay, binary thinking is very, very deeply ingrained in human psyche. If I want to create an identity, I create a counter-identity. Who are we? Well, I can tell you this much. We're not them. And in order to be more us, we got to be less them. Right? That's a very powerful line. So maybe it's not that he didn't know Joseph. Maybe it's that he decided to make Joseph into the opposite of who he is. This nation is a problem for us. Let's do something about them, right? Otherwise, in the event of war, they may join our enemies in fighting against us and rise from the ground. They may rise up and destroy us from within. That notion of a threat from within is one of the most primary human patterns of thinking. Watch out for the infection from within. So they set taskmasters over them to oppress them with forced labor. And they built the garrison cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they were oppressed, the more they increased and spread out. So the Egyptians came to dread them. So attempt number one to control this runaway Jewish population is, what's attempt number one? Taskmasters, slavery. Now you could ask an interesting question, which the Midrash goes to town with, which is, how do you take a free indigenous minority population, which has been living there for a very long time, and enslave them? How do you do that? How do you move people from their status as being free to the status of being slaves? What are the steps? That's a really interesting question. We'll come back to this in a moment. The Egyptians ruthlessly imposed upon the Israelites the labors they made them perform. Ruthlessly they made bricks and harsh labor at mortar and bricks with all sorts of tasks in the field. Does it work? Does that delimit the Israelite population? Does that succeed in accomplishing what Pharaoh wants to accomplish? No, why not? It would seem to me that if you want to control a population by putting them to hard labor, that might do it. Why doesn't it work? Brian? Okay, you think that there was resistance among the Egyptians? Sanctuary cities in Egypt, that sort of thing? Perhaps, okay, could be. Why didn't it work? Excuse me? You say that in my shul? You say, what do you mean? Sex. What do you mean by that? Yeah. A strong sense of family, strong sense of community. The oppression from the outside doesn't delimit the population. It makes them turn inward and develop even a stronger sense of... It's not just that there were more of them. They became more Jewish. This is a damn thing about you Jews, right? If you wanted to... This is a secret, so please don't repeat this outside this room. If you want to destroy a Jewish population, how do you do it? Do you oppress them? No. That's exactly right. You welcome them in. This is why Hitler was stupid. If Hitler would have said to the Jews of Germany, we're so glad you're here, in one generation, there'd been none left. The intermarriage rate in pre-war Germany was 78%. Lots and lots and lots of German Jews and Germans were intermarrying. Synagogues were empty, right? It would have been, in one generation, there'd have been no Jews left in Germany. He would have won. Instead, what do? When you oppress them, what do? They form... This is an old idea. If you make Jews conscious of being Jewish, they end up becoming more Jewish. It's the exact opposite strategy. All right, what's strategy number 2? You ready? Take a look. We're on top of page 320. Everybody okay so far? Any questions? Okay, good. Those of you just joining us, this is Valley Beth Shalom. We're in the red book on page 320. The king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other was named Puah. What's the name of the king of Egypt? We don't know. He has not been introduced. What is the significance of naming somebody? It says something about that person's importance in the narrative. By not giving him a name, you're already putting him in a certain place of historical anonymity. However, the midwives, who would seem to be rather insignificant in the story, after all, they're only women, they're named. Now, the most important question is going to be the following. Hebrew midwives, the Hebrew is Hamildot HaIvriot. You ready for a quick Hebrew grammar lesson? There are 2 constructions in Hebrew grammar. One is construct, and the other is adjectival. If I say Ivriot, Hebrew, is an adjective, I say these are Jewish women, Hebrew women, who perform the office of midwife to other Hebrew women. Get it? Jewish girls taking care of Jewish girls. Okay? If I say it's a construct, then I say these are Egyptian women performing the office of midwife to the Hebrew women. That the populations were so mixed that Hebrew Jewish women had Egyptian OB-GYN doctors, right? That clear? Keep that in mind. Rashi and the Midrashic tradition is going to take the first. They're going to say that Shiphrah and Puah are actually Miriam and Yocheved, which is to say that the only good people in Egypt were the Jewish people. Other people, including Rabbi Showeiss, would say it's the other way around, that this is the first case of Christian rescuers. Okay? Watch what happens. He says to them, when you deliver the Hebrew women, look at the birth stool. That's the stool that the rock that you use to deliver babies. If it's a boy, kill him. If it's a girl, let her live. So he couldn't delimit their population by forced labor. What's plan B? Limited genocide. Limited genocide. Get the midwives to kill the babies as they're being born. Seems reasonable, right? A good way to limit the population. There's only one problem. What do midwives do? They bring life into the world. Where do midwives learn this art? Where would a midwife learn such an art? From another midwife. Probably her, who probably learned it from her, who probably learned it from her for 10,000 years. And then more than that, one more thing. Remember that this is in the days before fetal monitors, anti-hemorrhaging drugs. What did a midwife have at her disposal to birth babies? Water, shmatas, and fingers. The woman knew where to touch, how to relax the mother, how to stop the bleeding by touching certain places, by pressing in certain places, how to coax the baby out, how to turn the baby if the baby's breech. All of that knowledge is contained where? No, you see, that's exactly wrong, Mark. It's not in her head. It's in her hands. There are things that your fingers know that your head doesn't know. If you want to prove that's true, try tying your shoes while paying attention. It's really hard to do. Try typing while paying attention. Right? I don't know where the keys on a keyboard are. My fingers do, though. I don't know how to tie my shoes. My fingers do. So for 10,000 generations, you have women who have assimilated life-giving capacities in their fingers. And now you come along and you say, I want you to take those very same fingers and kill. Can you make healers into killers? It's a really interesting question. The Nazis did, which is one of the great tragedies of the Nazis, right? But here what happens is, look what happens. The midwives, fearing God, did not do as the king of Egypt told them. They let the boys live. Now, in case you get this wrong, Rabbi Schulweis made the wonderful case that the names of God are significant. Look at the Hebrew. V'terena hamiyeldot et ha-Elohim. Elohim is not Adonai. Adonai is the God of the Jewish tribe. Who's Elohim? Life. Life. They respected life. They feared life. The God of life, a God of the universe. These were women of conscience. Yirat Elohim is the Bible's word for conscience. They couldn't do it. They couldn't kill. But you got a problem now. If Pharaoh is already ready to kill in order to achieve his goals, what's going to happen when he catches these midwives? So they have to protect themselves. So what do? Right? So the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and said to them, why have you done this thing, letting the boys live? What the hell are you doing? Now remember we said before, you can't defeat facts. You can't defeat a narrative with facts. You can only defeat a narrative with another narrative. What has Pharaoh been telling his people? He's telling his people that these Israelites are not human. What did Joseph Goebbels tell his people? What did Joseph Goebbels tell his people? If you're going to take an indigenous population and destroy it, the first thing you do is identify it. Those people. And the second thing you do is give it a metaphor. Vermin. And then you castigate them. They're the reason we have lost our greatness. And then you can take the next step and exterminate them. But you dehumanize them in the process. So what do the midwives do? Listen to this brilliant piece of political writing. Right? So the king of Egypt summoned and said, what have you done? And the midwife said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh, it's just like you said. It's just like you said. They're not human. They're not human. Because the Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. No. And here, ladies and gentlemen, is the reason you have to learn Hebrew. Because this translation is absolutely horrendous. The phrase is, and anybody who knows a bit of Hebrew or ever had a Yiddish-speaking grandmother living in your house, right? The Hebrew is, ki chayot hena. Chayot. Did your bubby ever call you a vilda chaya? I don't know how you say that in Persian, but I'm sure there's an equivalent. Right? What is a vilda chaya? Right, when my bubby got really mad at us, she'd scream at us, Epis vilda chaya, which means, what are you, some kind of beast? You're some kind of animal? The midwives say to Pharaoh, these are not humans. Chayot hena, they're animals. Before we get there, they have litters of 12 children. My God, Jewish women. They're lawyers by the morning, they have a litter of 12 children, and they're back in court by afternoon. My God. Now, what can Pharaoh say? Can Pharaoh contradict that? No, because that's his own propaganda. They simply quoted his own propaganda back to him, right? Before the midwives come, they've given birth. Now, what have we just had? We've had a vignette here that has no effect on the course of the narrative, right? This attempt by Pharaoh to limit the population of the Israelites by limited genocide it didn't work. It failed. So if it failed, why is it here in the text? If it failed, why is it here in the text? Okay? Think for a second. Shh. Every word in the Bible is worth $1 million because someone had to schlep it on his back for 1,000 years. Why did they put this story in the text if this has no effect on the course of the narrative? We could have skipped this and gone right back to the slavery, which is the really main principle, the principal point of the whole text. This is a digression. And the question is, why this digression? What's the point of this digression? So, no, because Moses isn't part of this. Moses is coming later. Moses is coming late, but everyone's going to be doing it soon. If you look at the end of the story, look at the last verse, Mel. Look at the last verse. Then Pharaoh charged all his people, every boy that is born you'll throw into the Nile. He gives up on the midwives and he makes everybody do it. So this has no principal effect. Why is this piece of text here? So look at the next line. It's because of the next line. You ready? And God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and increased greatly. And because the midwives feared God, he established households for them. What does it mean when the Torah says you establish a household for somebody? Does it mean they got a new kitchen? Is that what it is? What does it mean to say batim? What is a bayit in the Bible? A bayit in the Bible, it's not a house. It's not a physical house. A bayit in the Bible is a dynasty. A bayit is family, is progeny. Because the midwives preserved the population of the Jewish people, what did God do for them? They had many descendants. They filled the world. They filled the world. What difference does that make? It's very important. You're discussing here Israelite identity, Jewish identity. What is the essence of Jewish identity? There is a tendency, even among us, to think in binary terms. Believe it or not, Jews do this too. In order to be us, we decide that we're not them. So there is a whole vocabulary of Jewish binaries. Goyim, Goyishakop, Shegitz, Shiksa, and I'm sure in Persian there's the equivalent. I just know the Yiddish ones because I had a grandmother who screamed at me these things. Right? Now what is it? What are you being told here? You are not permitted to define yourself by what you're not. You're not permitted to walk the world thinking that you are somehow morally superior to the people of the universe. You're not permitted to think that they're barbarians and you're the only civilized tribe here. Why not? Why not? Because the person you point at and say, Goy, Shegitz, Shiksa, that person might very well be the descendant of Shifra and Puah. If it wasn't for their moral courage, you wouldn't be here. You may not define yourself negatively against the rest of the world. This is a tremendously powerful polemic against this Jewish thing that, like, we're superior to everyone. We know, we know. We know we're smarter, and we know we're better, and we know we're more civil, and we know that we're incapable of moral mistakes because we're Jews after all. And the answer is nonsense. The only reason you're here is because two Egyptian women stood up to the Pharaoh, risked their lives and everything that was precious to them to save you, to save your children. That's the only reason you're in the world. And they live in the world with you. And if they live in the world with you, instead of castigating them and pushing them away, you might want to go find them. You might want to go find the descendants of Shifra and Puah and draw them close because they are potential allies. Because they bear conscience in the same way that you do. In fact, they bear conscience in a deeper way than you do. You have conscience because you're the subject of revelation. They have conscience because they were born with it. They have conscience because it's somehow in them. They're people you ought to go find. That's the purpose of this. It's a meditation on Jewish identity. All right, now we get to the last scene. Ready? And the last scene is because they couldn't, because slavery didn't work, and because the midwives didn't work, there's one last way, and that is general genocide. Throw all the boys into the Nile. Throw all the boys into the Nile. And now the story shifts. So shift the story now from macro to micro. If I say throw all the boys into the Nile, that's a macro. That's a national social policy. And that's usually what history deals with. When I was a kid in school and we studied history, you study social trends, you study the great acts of government, you study warfare and peace. But history also takes place in the micro. History also takes place, and political narratives are also made up of anecdotes of individuals, of people who have suffered, and people who have struggled, and people who have triumphed. And that's where this goes next. A certain man of the house of Levi went and married a Levite woman. Why is that important? Well, you could be cynical and say, a Jewish boy said yes and committed. All right, that's cynical. Why is that important? What's going on around them? What's going on around them? Babies are being thrown into the Nile. What's the greatest act of resistance? Get married and have a kid, except there's a problem, right? The woman conceived, turn the page, 322, and she bore a son. And when she saw how beautiful she was, she hid him for 3 months. Now, wait a minute. When she saw how beautiful he was, she hid him for... And if he had been a miskite, she would have thrown him in the Nile? What? What do you mean? Like, what mother doesn't say, isn't this the most beautiful baby you ever saw? Like, what do you mean she saw how beautiful? What? Look at Hebrew. Come on, look back in the Hebrew. You got to know Hebrew to study Torah. V'tahar yisha v'teled ben. She had a baby. A boy, right. V'tere oto. Look at the top of the page. Ki tov hu. Ki tov does not mean he's on the Gerber box. What does ki tov mean? But where does ki tov come from? That's Genesis. Vayar Elohim ki tov. This is a kid with something in him. She sees right away. This is not your normal everyday over the above average high IQ soccer playing violin playing Jewish genius. This kid is ki tov. There's something. So she's going to hide him. Now, for just a second, tell me about that. Tell me about that. Especially the moms in the room. Tell me about hiding a baby when outside your door they're ripping babies from the breasts of women and destroying them in front of their eyes. Tell me about the sheer and utter terror of being a mother in that moment. Just for a second, gather in the terror of that woman. Tell me about the nightmares she suffers. Tell me about holding that baby every morning with trembling. Every time the kid cries, having to stifle the kid's cry because the police may be waiting outside. Just for a minute. In case you haven't guessed it yet, this is a woman's story. Exodus is written by women because it's going to be about 5 brave women. Shifra and Puah, the midwives, the mother, the sister, and the adoptive mother. 5 women are going to save the Jewish people. In fact, the way the story lays out, the men are all on the side of death, and the women are all on the side of life. It's a woman's story. So tell me about her courage as a mother, and her terror as a mother, and the nightmares that she suffers as a mother, and finally she can't take it anymore. She simply can't take it anymore. And when she could no longer hide him, and I don't think it's because his cries got so loud. I think it's her nightmares started to take her over. And when she couldn't live with the nightmare anymore, she got a wicker basket for him and caulked it with bitumen pitch. And the word for basket here is teva. And the only other place in the Bible where the word teva appears is Noah's Ark, right. And she put the kid into it and placed it among the reeds of the bank of the Nile. And the sister stationed herself at a distance to learn what would happen to him. And the daughter of Pharaoh comes down. Like, who is it? Like, of all the women who go bathing in the Nile, and everyone goes bathing in the Nile, who's going to get him? The princess, the daughter of the guy who created the policy to begin with. Right? And what happens? While her maidens were walking along, and she's going along with her, her Secret Service detail, right? And she spied the basket among the reeds and sent a slave girl to fetch it. So of all the women that are with her, of all these people with her, who's the only one who sees the basket? She is. Now, if I handed you a basket and there's a baby inside, would you need to take the top off of the basket to know there's a baby inside? How might you know there's a baby inside without me taking the top off the basket? Right. You know, if it's a Jewish kid especially, right? Right? You'd know right away. First of all, it'd be a designer basket. It'd have a label on it, of course, you know. Maybe even the receipt, you know, in case you wanted to return it. But look at the way that this is phrased. When she opened it, she saw that it was a child. Why is that important? What would her father want her to see? Her father's the Pharaoh. What has he taught Egypt to see when they see Hebrews? Chayot, threats, vermin, an alien, an other, something less than human. The narrative of Pharaoh's administration is to teach you to not see a human being when you see a Hebrew. That's how Goebbels got the German nation to turn on their Jewish friends and neighbors. You don't see them as human. You literally see them as a threat. You see them as a threat. Be careful of a political administration that teaches you to see groups of people in certain ways and to see them as threats, because that's a very dangerous political move. But here you see an insurgency. And the insurgency is she sees right past all of that. She doesn't see threat. She doesn't see beast. She doesn't see other. She doesn't see alien. What does she see? Baby. And not just a baby crying. And she took pity on it. Right? She has chamla. She attaches herself to it. She's attached to it. She connects with the kid. She's a lady and she's a woman and she has a heart. I mean, men can have this propaganda, but she has a heart. She attaches herself to this kid right away. And in case you say, well, it's not a very bright girl, she wouldn't have known, they put it in her mouth, right? They put it in her mouth. And she says, this must be a Hebrew child. They make her say it. Why does the text make you say it? Because the text wants you to know, and she knows exactly what she's doing. Who is she? She's a wonderful character now. Think about who she is. She's the rebellious teenage daughter of the Pharaoh. She's the one who says, I'm not buying his crap. Can I say that? I'm not buying his propaganda. This is a child. This is a human being. This is mine. And the sister shows up and says, shall I get you a Hebrew nurse? And he says, get me a Hebrew nurse. And the kid then is nursed by these two women. Nebuch, he has two mothers. But both of them have this capacity. Then they have a capacity then to see. Okay? Now, the next section is, we're late. Oh, God, you. The next section is owned by Jeffrey Katzenberg. So don't write anything in that white space. That's licensed. That whole space is licensed to DreamWorks Studios. The whole movie of Prince of Egypt fits into that white space right there. We'll do one more verse, then we'll quit. Sometime after that, Moses grew up. And he went out to his kinsfolk. Vayetze elechav. Wait a minute. Kinsfolk? Who are his kinsfolk? Echav means his brothers. Who does he belong to? He has two identities. He has two mothers. He has two homes. He has two names. He has two identities. He can be what? He can be Hebrew. He can be one of the Hebrew slaves, or he can be Prince of Egypt. He is in between. Being in between puts him in a very interesting place, doesn't it? What? Because, did you ever see the movie The Last Emperor? Okay, you have to see movies in order to understand the Torah, Mel. That's how God intended it, right? The opening scene of the movie The Last Emperor, this boy of about 9 or 10 is suckling. And you say, what? And you say, yeah. In royal houses, children were nursed up until their 9th birthday. They weren't weaned until they were 9 years old. So he grows up with his Hebrew mother as well as his nurse, as well as his Egyptian mother, as his guardian. So he's told both stories, and he's given a choice. Not just is he given a choice, he assimilates both identities. You're shaking your head, Yolanda. I was waiting for you to respond.
I've been waiting for this.
Go ahead, go ahead.
For this.
Yeah.
And you walked right into it.
I know. You walk in anything, I invite you into the conversation. This is carefully planned.
My daughter worked on the food season, and they were having trouble. And the way they figured it out, this question, your question, how do you know? Was an old midrash I wrote in this time, which is premised on this idea. You're going to like it.
I know.
But not at first. And that is, he didn't know he was Jewish.
Yeah.
This business about suckling till 9 is a fanciful story on your part, and I congratulate you.
You're welcome.
The truth is, the Pharaoh's daughter didn't want him thinking he was a Hebrew. He didn't think he was a Hebrew. And I actually spent last week researching circumcision rites of ancient Egyptians.
Right.
And it's amazing.
You have interesting, Kate. You have interesting hobbies, Gilman. I got it.
Anything regarding penises,
Yeah. Yeah.
can't believe what you get.
On that, I will probably agree with you.
It turns out
It turns out.
that in ancient Egyptian practice,
Yeah.
circumcision, which would be the way you would know.
Yeah.
After all, if they don't circumcise, he's circumcised, this is circumcised 8 days, he would know he was Jewish that way.
Right.
But if the Egyptian ruling class, as I discovered in my research, circumcised, which they did,
Right.
that wouldn't be a way.
Right.
I add to my case that he didn't know,
Okay.
that it says he went out to see his kinsfolk.
Right.
Does he say, oh, my kinsfolk? No. This is an editorial remark
Right.
about what he did.
Right.
Not his own self-understanding.
No, I understand that. Right. The question is, who's his kinsfolk? Right. Right. Right.
Is it makes his killing the taskmaster the reason he was chosen.
Okay.
He acted not to defend Jews, not to defend his family,
Right.
not because it was an ethnic obligation.
Good.
He killed the taskmaster because it was just.
Right.
And because God saw that this man, who had no idea that he was Jewish, was willing to act on behalf of humanity at large,
Right.
he chose him.
Okay.
And the first time he learns that he's Jewish is at the burning bush.
Okay.
But it's incomplete.
Yes.
So you have in chapter 4 that he had to circumcise Gershom.
Right.
Therefore,
Right.
it is actually the case
Okay.
that he didn't know till the bush. So how was it that he ever knew?
Okay.
Because of lullabies his mother sang to him as a child.
Okay. Good.
And when he went out just walking around,
He heard the lullabies. Okay. That's sweet. That's nice. That's nice. All right. So I want to offer. No. No. I think it's a beautiful. It's a beautiful reading of the story. I'm gonna argue with it just on this guy, and I don't disagree with you. I want to make it more complicated. Again, to me, he's Oscar Schindler. Spielberg does a beautiful job creating in Oscar Schindler a complicated character, a man drawn between two identities, two possibilities for being human. And if you remember, there's a scene in the Schindler's List when he's riding his horse with this beautiful girl that he's met, and they're liquidating the Lublin ghetto behind him. And you begin to see that Schindler is torn between his two identities. I think Moses has two identities. I think he's given a choice. I think the question is, as the old Union song was, Which side are you on, boy? That's the question of the narrative. And most of us would choose the palace because it's a much nicer identity to be a prince of Egypt and live in the palace and live as a free man and live luxuriously than to be identified with the slaves. But here you're exactly right. It's the next moment that defines him, right? He witnesses their labors. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his kinsmen. Now, one of his kinsmen means, which one is his kinsman? Is the Egyptian his kinsman, or is the Hebrew his kinsman? But here's the best part of that verse. Look at 324, the top of the page, right? Vayar, listen to the Hebrew. Vayar ish mitzri makeh ish ivri. What word is repeated? Ish. You don't even need that word in the text. You could say, Vayar mitzri makeh ivri. He sees an Egyptian, which is how the translator translated. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew. But that's not what it says in Hebrew. What does it really say? He saw an Egyptian man beating a Hebrew. He sees two human beings engaged in a transaction. Average Egyptian walking by sees absolutely nothing. Because the average Egyptian doesn't see the Hebrew as a man. He sees the Hebrew as a slave. And beating a slave is the functional equivalent of changing a tire on the side of the road. Same equivalent. I used to have a television set. You want to get channel 11, you had to hit it just in the right place. That's what Egyptian sees. Slaves are nothing. They're just a quantity of labor. If you can't get the labor out of it, you give it a zetz. If you can't get it to work after the zetz, you kill him and get another one. It's disposable. Disposable, invisible human beings. That's what it means to be a slave, except for Moses. At that moment, this is where Rabbi Gelman is exactly right. At that moment, the man grows a soul because he doesn't see that. What does he see? Two human beings. Now, the word me'echav at the end of the sentence is beautiful. It can mean that he saw the Hebrew as his brother. It can mean that he saw the Egyptian in his brother. But here's the most radical reading of it all. He saw that the Egyptian and the Hebrew were brothers. He saw the common humanity between these two men, but somehow the political culture in which they lived had set them against each other, had created circumstances in where one man almost kills another one with impunity. That's what Moses sees, the way that a political story can become murderous. That's what he saw at that moment. And at that moment, he's overcome. And the problem with Moshe Rabbeinu, and with this I promise Yossi will finish, is that he has no words. Because he speaks two languages, he didn't speak either one of them fluently. And not just fluently, meaning he couldn't, he doesn't have the articulation to say stop. Remember, he's a prince. He could say stop. He has no words. He responds from his kishkas, from his guts. And something wells up in him. It's so powerful he can't keep it down. The injustice of this, the cruelty of this, the brutality of this wells up in him, and it fills him with violence. And it fills him with violence, and he's filled with so much violence. But just for one brief second, he looks around and he notices nobody else is responding. And that's what makes him even crazier. Not only does a political culture incite one man to kill another man, but it allows the culture around them to be oblivious, to stand idly by. And Moses rises up and he kills the Egyptian. And then he realizes that he's a different man, that the act now defines him. He's a different man. Ladies and gentlemen, we saw yesterday a remarkable case study in the power of political storytelling. And how it's going to play out over the next 4 years, none of us can predict, but watch. It's going to be very interesting. Here you have another powerful meditation on the power of stories to shape human communities and also to destroy human communities. We know how this one turns out. We're going to stop now. We'll dive in together. This afternoon we get to hear Jill Epstein's wonderful book. Thank you for joining us. Shabbat Shalom.
יברכך השם מציון, קורא בטוב ירושלים.
השם מציון כל ימי חייך ורבנים לברך שלום על ישראל ירבנים לברך Shalom. Everybody clap with me. Heveinu Shalom Aleichem. Heveinu Shalom Aleichem. Heveinu Shalom Aleichem. Heveinu Shalom 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 Aleichem. Od yishama be'arei Yehuda ובחוצות ירושלים עוד ישמע בערי יהודה ובחוצות ירושלים כל ששון וכל שמחה כל חתן וכל כלה הבאנו שלום עליכם הבאנו שלום עליכם הבאנו שלום עליכם הבאנו שלום 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 עליכם.
Shabbat shalom everybody. People who say Kaddish kindly please rise and turn to page 71. People who leave please leave quiet and fast. So we want to pray. Thank you. Page 71. ויתגדל ויתקדש מרבה ועולמה דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולמעולמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעולמה ואמרו אמן על ישראל ועל רבנן ועל תלמידיון ועל כל תלמידי תלמידיון ועל כל מאן דיעסקין באורייתא דיבי אתרא הדין ודיבי כל אתר ואתר ילהון ולכון שלמה רבה חינה וחיסדה ורחמין וחין אריכין ומזון הרוויחה ופורקנה מן קדם אבון דיבישמיה ואמרו אמן יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן עושה שלום במרומיו וברחמיו יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. Please turn in your blue sidurim, you may be seated, page 96. אשרי שביתך עוד יהללוך סלם. תהילת אדוני ידבר פיו יברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד ואנחנו נברך יה מעתה ועד עולם הללויה הללויה. אדוני שומר את גרים יתום ואלמנה יעודד בדרך רשעים יעוות ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור הללויה הללויה. בונה ירושלים אדוני. מגיד דבריו ליעקב חוקיו ומשפטיו לישראל לא עשה כן לכל גוי ומשפטים בל ידעום הללויה הללויה. עודו על ארץ ושמיים וירם קרן לעמו תהילה לכל חסידיו לבני ישראל עם קרובו הללויה הללויה. לאסור מלכיהם בזיקים ונכבדיהם בחבלי ברזל לעשות בהם משפט כתוב הדרו לכל חסידיו הללויה הללויה. הללוהו בצלצלי שמע, הללוהו בצלצלי תרועה, כל הנשמה תהלליה, הללויה, כל הנשמה תהלליה, הללויה. Please rise together, page 100, the final paragraph. ברוך הוא שם כבודו לעולם ימלא כבודו את כל הארץ, אמן ואמן. אתה הוא אדוני האלוהים אשר בחרת באברהם והוצאתו מאורכים ושמת שמו אברהם ומצאת את לבבו נאמן לפניך. והים בקעת לפני ויבוא בתוך הים ביבשה ואת רודפיהם השלכת במצולות כמו אבן במים עזים. וירא ישראל את היד הגדולה אשר עשה אדוני במצרים ויראו עם את אדוני ויאמינו באדוני ובמשה עבדו. אדוני איש מלחמה, אדוני שמו. כי לאדוני המלוכה ומושל בגויים ועלו מושים בהר ציון לשפוט את ערי סב והייתה לאדוני המלוכה והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד נשמת כל חי תברך את שמך. You may be seated, page 104. נהללך ונשבחך ונפארך ונברך את שם קודשך כאמור לדוד. ברכי נפשי את אדוני וכל קרבי את שם קודשו. האל בתעצומות עוזך הגדול בכבוד שמך הגיבור לנצח והנורא בנורותיך המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא. Page 105, middle of the page, שוכנד Canto Fax.
שוכנד מרום וקדוש שמו. שוכנד מרום וקדוש שמו. ובלשון חסידים תתרומם ובקרב קדושים תתקדש ובמקהלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל. על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות דוד בן ישי עבדך משיחך ישתבח שמך לא עד מלכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני אל מלך גדול ותשבחות אל ההודעות אדוני נפלאות הבוחר בשירי זמרה מלך אביר חיי העולמים יתגלה ביד השם מלבה ולעד ולגרותי והמליך מלכותי וחייכם ומלכנו חייך בית ישראל בגלה ובמלכותי ומרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך הולמיה יתברך ויתמך ויתבואר ויתרומם ונזיר ויתהדר ויתהלב ויתהלל שבית קודשה ליהי אליו מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דם ירון ויעולמה וימרו. ברוך הוא אדוני המבורך ברוך אדוני המבורך ברוך אדוני יבורך לעולם ועד, ברוך אדוני לכל יוצרו ולחושך, עושה שלום ובורא את הכל, הכל יודוך והכל ישבחוך. Ein Gehr geworden in Monase wie so lat gebakken aber aber begoyen limot amanjia wenn do mel kharum shien dul khiat meitim hey radon al kol mahasim baruch vorach befi kol nishama God love it to ever my lay or ida do dvuna so vimoto hamitka al khayot kodesh ונדר בכבוד על המרכבה חותם ישור יבנה חייסו חסד ורחמים לבני כבודו טובים מיורות שברא אלוהינו שערם ודעת בבינה ובשכלה כוח וגבורה נתן בהם להיות מושלים בקרב תבל מלאים זיו פיקים נוגה נאה זיותם בכל העולם שמחים בצדם וזזים בבואם עושים בימה רצון קונם ביער וכבוד נותנים לשמוע צהל וריין על זכר מלכותו קרא לשמש ויזרח אור הרע והתקין צורת הלבנה שבח נותנים לו כל צבע מרום יפרד וגדול השרפים ואופנים וחיות הקודש לאל אשר שבה מכל המעשים לפיכך יברכו לאלוהי כולם בודים את ביים בקדושה ותורה ושירה וזמרה מבורכים ושבחים פארים מעריצים בממלכתיים את שמו אל המלך הגדול הגיבור והנורא הקדוש ובכל מקבלים עליהם עולמם כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ביראה קדוש 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 מלך כל הארץ כן ברעש גדול מנסים מן השרפים מלמטה משבחים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקום אור חדש על ציון תאיר ונזכה כולנו מהרה ליורו ברוך אתה אדוני יוצא המאורות אברהם ואהבתם לכם בסדר והוא יריננו בתורתך ודאבי להודות לך ולאחריך מאהבה ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה
שמע ישראל, page 112.
Hashem
kol edorot zera Yisrael. Avadecha go aleinu, go aleinu, go el avodeinu. Yodreinu tzur Yeshuadeinu, vodeinu matileinu, me'olam shemecha. Ein Elohim zulatecha. Eloheinu t'me'olam. Teilot le'elyon. Energy. Baruch hu v'simcha rabba ve'averuch ulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh norah tehilot osef. Big breath and energy. Go. Shira chadasha shivechut yulim lashimcha zvatayam yachad kulam hodu v'melichu ve'ameru Adonai melech le'olam. Keep going. Melody. I'll sing harmony. You just sing the melody. Tzur Yisrael, Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, U'v'dechinu mecha, Yehuda be'Yisrael. Energy. Go aleinu, Adonai tzvaot shemo gedosh.
Page 115b and page 116 we'll do together, and later we continue silent to page 121, 15b.
Baruch atah Nikadesh et Shemecha ba'olam כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי הרוב, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וכרזר זה ואמר, קדוש, קדוש, קדוש. אז בקול רעש גדול, אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול, מתנשאים לעומת צרופים. ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני. ממקומך מלכנו תופיע ותימנו ולנו כי עמך הקים אנחנו לך. מתי תמלוך בציון בקרוב בימינו לעולם, לעולם ועד תשכון. תתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך. ירושלים, ירושלים, ירושלים עירך. ירושלים, ירושלים, ירושלים עירך לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים ויהיה בינינו תירנה מלכותך כדבר היאמור בשירי עוזך על ידי דוד משיח צדקך ימלוך אדוני לעולם. רבדון נגיעו לך ונדן לסוך מרשותך נגדיש ושבחך ולעינו בבינו יום שלום ועד כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה ברוך אתה אדוני
conclude the Amidah on your own pace. Please remain standing. Page 138, Kadisha.
Kadav Yala Shibera Bobby Amade Virdevi Amin Mordechai Economic Hide of Israel, Vagalau Yolan Kori Yimeru, Amen. Beri Khulela Miko Bahat Visharat Shkhadu and Hamatu Miran Biomavi Meru.
Shabbat Shalom. Please open to page 139, the service for taking of the Sefer Torah. We want to call forward in celebration of Shabbat Chatan, Carolyn Shoham, Camelia Naim, Leora, and Josh Matian. And Cami, you get to hold the Torah, man. Okay? Come on up, please, to open the ark. All of those people, come on up to open the ark. Page 139. Ein kamocha. Mazel tov. Smile. Kadisha Yakira. It's back there. Shama, shama, shama.
שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, העולם עומד, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, העולם עומד, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, העולם עומד, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים, אב הרחמים הוא ירחם, עם המואסים, ויכון אותנו לפליטת עולמים, וימלא משאלותינו במידת טובה.
Please be seated. You're welcome to close the blue prayer books now. Open the red volume of the Chumash. Please put the blue books aside, but not on the floor, because they're sacred books. And you'll find the reading for this morning beginning on page 317, the beginning of the book of Shemot.
ויעזור ויגן ויושיע לכל החוסים בו ונאמר אמן. הכל עבוד תורה. Who is the first aliyah? יעמוד יוסף בן יהודה ראשון במקום כהן, ברוך שנתן תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו, ואתם הדבקים באדוני אלוהיכם חיים כולכם היום. ברוך אדוני.
ברוך אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני מבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בהרבנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן.
Amen ve'ele Shemot b'nei Yisrael Habayim Mitzrayma Jacob Yisrael Tovahu Ruvain Shimon Levi Yehuda Yisachar Zolun Binyamin Dan Naphtali Gad Asher Vayehi Kol nefesh. Yotzeir HaKoshivim nefesh. Yosef Vayabim Mitzrayim. Vayamad Yosef Echal Achav. Echal Ador Hahu. Uvenehei Yisrael. Paru Vayishretzu. Vayabu Ve'amtzu B'mod Ma'od. Vatimalei Ha'aretz Otam.
אמת תודה שוב, ברוך אתה אדוני בכל אשר נתננו תורת אמת והי עולם נתן בתוכנו ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן. יעמוד שלמה בן סימנתו לעלייה השנייה.
ברוך הוא אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם. אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Vayakam melech hadash al Mitzrayim, asher lo yada et Yosef, vayomer el amo, hinei, am b'nei Yisrael, ravatzu mimenu, havan et chakmalo, ben yirbeh, v'yah, ki tekrena milchama, v'nosav gam hu asonenu, v'nilcham banu elam in haaretz, Vayosim olav sarai misim lemana tobes sivlatam vahayeven areim skana lefaro et pitom vedram says kasher yanu oto ken your bebech and your frogs vayakutu mipenei penei Israel.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם. אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Who is the third aliyah? יעמוד יעלבי בן אברהם ושרה לעלייה השלישית. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. Repeat.
Baruch Adonai Hamarach Leolam Vaed. Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amin V'etan Lanu Et Torah. So Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Vayavid Mitzrayim, Epen Israel beforech, Vaymaru Chaim, Vavida Hakasha, V'chomo v'veinim, V'chol avada basadeh, Et kalavodatam, Asher avdu v'hem beforech, Vayomer melech Mitzrayim, Lam li'aldota evriyot, Asher Shem Achat Shifra, V'Shem Hashenit Puah, Vayomer, V'yalchen et Avriyot, Uriten Alav Mayim, Im Ben Hu, V'amiten Oto, V'imbat Hi V'chayab, V'atiren Ameldod et Ha'olahim, V'lo Asu Kasher, Diber Lehem Melech Mitzrayim, V'tichayena et Ha'yiladim.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'Hayim Olam Nota Boteinu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. This is Brother Sean's first aliyah. And first aliyah as a member of the community, first aliyah to hear his name called in the community, and first aliyah as a member of our family. I want to ask all the members of your family to come join us here on the bima as the community rises together as we welcome a new brother. Hevenu shalom aleichem. Hevenu shalom aleichem. Hevenu shalom aleichem. Hevenu shalom, shalom, shalom aleichem. Hevenu shalom aleichem. Heaven shalom aleichem. Heaven shalom aleichem. Heaven shalom shalom aleichem. Come here, brother. Stand here. This text is all about invisible people. We have a capacity as a culture, as a society, to render certain human beings invisible. When we look at them and don't see them, when we don't hear their cries and we don't feel their suffering, and we don't honor their presence among us, and we ignore their plight, and they become invisible, insignificant, and unexistent. They lose their existence for us. You in your profession as a fireman, and I told you once, I'm so jealous, right? You have taken a professional oath that nobody is invisible, that anybody's pain, anyone's distress, anyone's need is a compulsion for you to rise and to risk your own self and your own well-being and your own life to protect them. But that wasn't sufficient for you. You decided to join this family, which has been dedicated since its beginning, thousands of years ago, to allow every human being to shine in the world, to allow every human being to have a voice in the world, to make a sacred promise that I will not stand idly by when anyone in the world suffers. That was already in you. You were only looking for the words to put it to. And you found the words in Torah. You found the words in the sweet, wonderful home that you build with Rory and the kids. You found the words in this community. It is a privilege to welcome you as a brother, to welcome you to our community, and to call out your name as part of a blessing for the very first time in the community and the family of Israel. Mishaberach avotenu Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah. Hu yevarech et achenu, Eyal Lavi, ben Avraham v'Sara, she'ala lichvod ha'makom, lichvod ha'Torah, v'lichvod ha'kahal. Kodesh Baruch Hu yishmor alav, v'yavarech oto, v'yishlach al hatzlacha b'chol ma'aseh yadav, im kol Yisrael achav, v'nomar amen. May the source of blessings for our ancestors bless and protect and sustain Sean, who shall be known within the community of our family as Eyal Lavi ben Avram v'Sara. May he have strength and wisdom to care for those he loves, to care for those he is sent to protect. May he always fulfill the words of Torah, and may the words of Torah fill his heart and his soul with warmth, with strength, with wisdom, and with joy. May God bless the dreams of his hearts and the works of his hands. And together we say, Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'gianu lazman Yivarechecha Hashem etzion, Orei v'tuv Yerushalayim. Hoy Yivarechecha Hashem etzion, Kol yamei yamei chayecha. Oy urei vanim levanecha, Shalom al Yisrael. Urei vanim levanecha, Shalom shalom al Yisrael. Urei vanim levanecha, Shalom al Yisrael. Urei vanim levanecha, Shalom al Israel. Welcome. Please be seated. You get a free year in USY. Come on. Over here, over this side, over here. You guys, all right? They can be seated. All of you can go sit down. Mazel tov. Mazel tov. You got a Jewish boyfriend. So happy for you. Mazel tov.
The fourth aliyah you find on page 320, verse 18. Yamdu Shmuel Avraham ben David ואשתו דור בת אברהם הכהן וליבה לעלייה רביעית.
Baruch hu es Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam v'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu es Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Vayikra mel Mitzrayim lamel dod vayomer lahen madua sitena devor hazeh vatachayena et hahiladim vatamarna mel dod el paro ki lo chanashim hamitzrayot ha'evrayot ki chayot ha'hena v'tem tavo elayhem Hami aladod v'yoladu v'yitev Elohim lami aldod v'yir Elohim v'yatzmu me'od v'yikiru hami aladod et Elohim v'yas lahem batim v'yitza paro l'chol amo lemor kol habehen ha'ilod v'ya'orat ha'shlichu v'chol habat t'chayun.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam v'besocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
יעמדו ניסן בן שלמה וגליל, שרה בת שלמה ואסתר, לעלייה חמישית.
אדוני עמכם. רבנם ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם. אשר باخربان و میکل همین به ناتن لان و توراتو باروخ اتا ادونای نوتن هتورا
Amen. Vayelech ish beit Levi, vayikach et bat Levi, vatar isha vatelet bein, vatiroto kitovahu, vatitz pnei shlosha yirachim, v'lo yechlot hatspino, vatigach lo tevat gomer, vatachmara b'chomer uvazafet, vatasem bo et ayelet, vatasem basuf asfat hayor, ותצבח אותו מרחוק לדעה מה יעשה לו ותרד בת פרעה לרחוץ על היער ונערותיה הולכות על יד היער ותרד התיבה בתוך הסוף ותשלח את אמתה ותיקחיה ותפתח ותראהו את הילד והנה נער בוכה ותחמול עליו, ותאמר בידי העברים זה, ותאמר אחותו אל בת פרעה הילך, וקראתי לך אישה מנקת מן העבריות, ותניק לך את הילד, ותאמר לה בת פרעה לכי, ותלך עמה, ותקרא את אם הילד, ותאמר לה בת פרעה, הליכי את הילד הזה, ותקחו לי, ואני אתן לשכרך. ותיקח האישה, הילד שתיניקהו, ויגדל הילד, ותביאהו לבת פרעה, ויהי לה לבן, ותקרא שמו משה, ותאמר כי מן המים משיתהו.
אמת תורתנו הקדושה, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו את תורתו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נאטח בתוכנו, ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן.
אמן.
יעמדו אליהו בן אליהו ויוחנן ושושנה בת מוריאל ואסתר לעלייה שישית.
ברוך הוא את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני.
אדוני יברך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Amen. Vayhi baya mihimahim. Vayda Moshe. Vayetze elachav. Vayar besivlatam. Vayar ish mitzri. Makeh ish yivri me'achav. Vayifen kol v'chol. Vayar ki ein ish. Vayach et mitzri. Vayetmenel v'chol. Vayetze be'om hasheni. V'nei. Shnei anashim yivrim nitzim. Vayomer l'rasha. Lama takereyecha. Vayomer mi samecha. Leish sar v'shofet aleinu. Harageni ata omer. Kasher rakta et mitzri. Vayira Moshe vayomar. Achenu hadavar. Vayishma paro et hadavar hazeh. Vayivakesh larog et Moshe. Vayivrach Moshe mipnei paro. Vayashev beretz midyan. Vayashev al abed.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נעתה בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Amen.
יעמדו החתן אברהם בן ניסן ושרה ובחירת ליבו דבורה בת אליהו ושושנה לעלייה שביעית חזק חזק.
Olachain Midjan.
ברוך הוא את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך הוא אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
Not yet, not yet. Patience.
Amen. Olachain Midjan. Sheva banot vatavahonot edlena. Vatimalena et haritim lashkotzon avihen. Vayavo aroim vayigarshum. Vayakam Moshe vayishian. Vayashketzonam. Vatavona el ruel avihen. Vayomer madua mihartem bahayom. Vatomana ish mitzri. Hitzilanu miyad haroim. Vegam dalo lanu. Vayashkeratzon. Vayomer el benotav. Vayo lama zezavten et aish. Karan lo yachalachem. Vayom Moshe l'sheret et aish. Vayitain et zipora bitolim Moshe. Vateled bein. Vayikra et shemo Gershom. Ki amar ger ayiti eretz nachriyah.
ברוך אתה.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
When were you married? 4 months ago. Jeez. Old married people are
The next time will be the right time.
Right. This beautiful couple was married 4 months ago and have returned today with their family to celebrate Shabbat Chatan and to share the blessings of this community as they build a home and a family in Israel. We ask the community rise. We ask your whole family to come join us around the Torah, and we welcome all of you to this moment of blessing. Shalom Aleichem. Evenu Shalom Aleichem. Heavenu Shalom Aleichem. Heavenu Shalom Aleichem. The story is that Moshe is tending the sheep of his father-in-law Yitro, and he goes up into the mountains and he sees a miraculous sight. He sees this bush, and it burns, but it doesn't burn up. And Torah says he stops and he looks, and he says, I have to take a look and see what this is. And when he turns to take a look, that is when God comes to him and calls him Moshe, Moshe, and he gives him a mission. And Moses is not ready to take this mission. He asks a very powerful question. Who are you, God? What is your name? What shall I tell Israel is your name? And that is a mask for a much deeper question, which he will ask at the end when he says, and who am I? Mi anochi, who am I? Midrash says that that bush was put there at the beginning of the world, waiting for anyone to come by to ask the great questions. Who are you, God? And who am I? And what is it I am meant to do? And who do I belong to? Who belongs to me? Who am I responsible for? And who will come to my support and aid when I need help, when my hands are empty and my heart is low? Who are you, God? That bush is waiting there. And any time a human being is ready, that bush appears, that God appears. There is no moment in your life quite like this one. You don't quite understand who you are as a single man, as a single woman. But when you stand and look to each other, and you understand what it is you have done, you understand that you have bound yourself to another in love and in loyalty and in faithfulness, you will begin to understand who you are and whose you are, who belongs to you and who you belong to. You will begin to understand that you have in your hands this profound power to bond with another, to love each other, to care for each other, to build a home and a family together, to share life together, to share laughter, to comfort each other in tears. You will understand what your parents have come to understand over the years of their marriages, and your grandparents came to understand. Who is this God who inhabits the world? Because if there is any place that God shows up, that God is revealed, it's in the love and support and kindness and generosity of heart and the shared laughter of two loving friends who have said, you're mine, and I will be with you. If there's a bush that ever shows up in your life, this is it. This is the moment you discover what and who you are. And as this flowers over the years, and as your relationship deepens, and as you discover who you really are and how much you love each other, you will feel the presence of God even stronger. That's the beautiful gift of marriage. You are both remarkably good friends. The sweetness of your joy together, the laughter you share. Smile, come on, smile. There you go. Just get so serious on me. It is something that warms all of us. And someday, you will build a family together that will share that beautiful song and that beautiful laughter and that deep and profound love. And you will feel once again the depths of God's presence in all the moments of your life. From the chuppah, we bless you, and we bless you again. Yishaberach Avotenu Avram Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sar Rivka Rachel v'Leah. Hu yivarech et hachatan Avram ve'et hakala Dvorah asher alu l'kvod hamakom l'kvod Torah v'l'kvod Shabbat ve'asher amdu tachat hachuppah kechatan v'kala yiratzon sheyizku livnot bayit b'Yisrael asher bo yishkenu ava v'ach v'shalom v'reut bayit asher bo yigadlu banim b'briute b'osher be'avat Torah b'masim tovim v'nomar Amen. May the source of blessings for our ancestors bless Kamyar and Deborah, who stood beneath the chuppah and now stand before this community as Chatan and Kala. May God give them the wisdom and the strength and the deepening love to build a home within the community of Israel, a home filled with laughter and song of joy and simcha, a home filled one day with the song of children to be raised in the light of Torah, with hands ready to bring wholeness to the world. And together we say, Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh. Amen. Mazel tov. Ve'arei Yehuda, hoi, uvechutzot Yerushalayim, ol sason ve'kol simcha, ol chatan ve'kol kala, ol sason ve'kol simcha, ol chatan ve'kol kala. Hay lay lay, hay lay lay, hay hay. Ay lay lay, ay lay 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 lay. Ay lay lay, ay lay lay, ay ay. Ay lay lay, ay lay lay.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה בעולמה דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי וחייכות וביומכות ובחיי לכל בית ישראל בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי דקודשה לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירת בעולמה ואמרו יעמוד אריה בן ישראל ודינה רחל מפטיר חזק חזק.
Maftir's on page 340 in the Chumash at the bottom of the column.
Send it back.
Oh, no, here.
Good? You good? Right here?
Vayeshev Moshe
good?
Yeshem. Let's see.
Baruch Hu Adonai Amvarach. Baruch Adonai Amvarach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam. Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Vayeshev Moshe El Adonai Vayomar Adonai L'marayot Lama Zeh Shlachtani Umeyaz Batil Paro L'Rabbi B'Shmecha Herat Lama Zeh Vatelo Itzalta Et Amecha Vayomer Adonai El Moshe Ata Tireh Asher Asel L'Paro Ki V'yad Chazaka Yishalchem V'yad Chazaka Yigarshem Me'artzo.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
יעמדו המגביה והגולל. The Gil's brothers. Number 1 and number 5. Number 4.
Let's rise together.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל.
Please be seated. You'll find the Haftarah, the prophetic section for this Shabbat, page 343, that Lee will read for us.
If you can see. It's bar mitzvah, right? No. It could be. We're a few weeks away. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nevi'im tovim meratzav v'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah Moshe avdo v'Yisrael amo v'nvi'ei ha'emet v'tzedek. Abaim Yashresh Yaakov Yatzitzu Frach Yisrael Umlo Penei Tevel Tenuva Hakmakat Makehu Hikahu Im Kehereg Harugav Horeg Besas'a Beshalchat Erivena Hagaberucho Hakasha Beyom Kadim Lachein Bazot Yechupar Avon Yaakov V'zeh kol peri hasir chato beshumo kol avnei mizbeach ki avnei gir mipatzot lo yakumu esharim v'chamanim ki ir betzura badad naveh meshulav ne'ezav kamidbar Sham yirei egel v'sham yirbatz v'chila se'ifeha vivash ketzira teshavarna nashim ve'ot me'irot ota ki lo ambinotu al kain yerachamenu asehu ve'yotzru lo yechunenu V'haya bayom hahu yachpot Adonai meshibolet hanahar al nachal Mitzrayim ve'atem teluktu le'achad echad b'nei Yisrael V'haya bayom hahu yitaka b'shofar gadol uva'u Ha'ovdim be'eretz Ashur ve'hanidachim be'eretz Mitzrayim v'hishtachavu l'Adonai be'ar HaKodesh b'Yerushalayim Hoi Ateret geut shikorei Ephraim v'tzitz novel tzvi tif'arto asher al rosh geshmanim halumei yayin Hine chazak ve'amitz l'Adonai kezerem barad za'ar katev kezerem mayim kebirim shotfim haniach la'aretz beyad beraglim teramasna teret geut shekorei Ephraim ve'haita tzitzat novel Tzevi tifarto asher al rosh geshmanim bevikura beterem kayitz asher yir'eh haro'eh ota be'oda v'chapo yivalena bayom hahu yihye Adonai tzvaot le'ater et tzvi ve'litzpirat tifara lish'ar amo ולרוח משפט ליושב על המשפט ולי גבורה משיבי מלחמה שערה וגם אלה ביין שגו וישחר טעו, כהן ונביא שגו בשכר, נבלעו על יין טעו, מן השחר שגו, ברועה פקו פלילה, כי כל שולחנות מלאו, כי צואה בלי מקום. מי יורה דעה, ואת מי יבן שמועה, גמולי מחלב, עתיקה משדים, כי צב לצב. קו לקו, זעיר שם, כי בלעגי שפה ובלשון אחרת ידבר אל העם הזה, אשר אמר אלוהי עליהם, זאת המנוחה. הניחו ליעף וזאת המרגעה, ולא אהבו שמועה, והיה להם דבר אדוני צב לצב, קו לקו, זעיר שם, למען ילכו וכשלו אחור, ונשברו ונוקשי ונלכדו. לכן כה אמר אדוני על בית יעקב, אשר פדה את אברהם, לא אתה יבוש יעקב, ולא אתה פניו יחברו. כי בראותו ילדיו, מעשה ידי ברכבו, יקדישו שמי, והקדישו את קדוש יעקב, ואת אלוהי ישראל יעריצו. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, צור כל העולמים, צדוק בכל הדורות, האל הנאמן, האומר ועושה, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק. נאמן אתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו, ונאמנים דבריך, ודבר אחד מדבריך, אחור לא ישוב ריקם, כי המלך נאמן ורחמן אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הנאמן בכל דבריו. רחם על ציון כי בית חיינו, ולעלובת נפש תושיע במהרה בימינו, ברוך אתה אדוני, משמח ציון בבניה. שמחנו אדוני אלוהינו באלך ונביא עבדך, ובמלכות בית דוד משיחך במהרה יבוא, ויגע ליבנו על כיסו לא ישב זר, ולא ינחלו עוד אחרים את כבודו, כי בשם קודשך נשבעת לו, שלא יכבה נר לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני מגן דוד. על התורה ועל העבודה, אל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה שנתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כל חי, תמיד לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת.
This coming week, we will celebrate the new month of Shabbat. It will come next Shabbat. We'll ask everyone, please, to rise now. Find the most physically fit person sitting on your row, and let them take all of the red books over here to the table. And everyone else, open the blue book to page 150, page 150, as we bless the new month that is coming upon us.
יהי רצון מלפניך, יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, שתקד ישלם את החודש הזה לטובה ולברכה שתקד ישלם את החודש הזה לטובה ולברכה. If you want to lean this on you. ותיתן לנו חיים ארוכים, חיים של שלום, חיים של טובה, חיים של ברכה, חיים של פרנסה, חיים של חילוץ עצמות, שתקד ישרנו אל החודש הזה לטובה ולברכה, שתקד ישרנו את החודש הזה לטובה ולברכה. חיים שיש בהם יראת שמיים ויראתכם, חיים שאין בהם בושה וכלימה, חיים של אושר וכבוד, חיים שתבואנו אהבת תורה, אהבת תורה ויראת שמיים, חיים שאין בהם, חיים שימלאו משאלות ליבנו לטובה, אמן. מי שיעשו ניסיון אבותינו וגואלתו מעבדות לחירות, הוא יגאל אותנו בקרוב, ויקבץ נידחנו מערבה כנפות הארץ. חברים כל ישראל ונאמר ראש חודש שבט יהיה ביום שבת קודש הבא עלינו ועל כל ישראל לטובה. יחדשהו הקדוש ברוך הוא עלינו ועל כל עמו ואת ישראל לחיים ולשלום, לששון ולשמחה, לישועה ולנחמה ונאמר amen.
As the Torah is set down, you may be seated. We continue on the next page, page 151. Ashrei.
Ashrei Ashrei Veitecha, Oja Hallelu Asala.
אשרי העם שככה לו, אשרי העם שאדוני אלוהינו. כוכב.
תהילה לדוד, ארומימך אלוהי המלך, וברכה שמך לעולם ועד.
בכל יום אברכך, וללה שמך לעולם.
גדול אדוני ומחולל מאוד, ולגדולתו אין חקר.
דור לדור שבח מעשיך, וגבורותיך יגידו.
הדר כבוד הודיך, ונפלאותיך עשיך.
וזוז נורותיך יאמרו, וגדולתך אספרנה.
זכר רבתך יביעו, וצדקתך ירננו.
חנון ורחום אדוני, ערך אפיים ובעל חסד.
טוב אדוני לכל, ורחם על כל מעשיו.
יודוך אדוני כל מעשיך, וחסידיך יברכוך.
כבוד מלכותך יאמרו, וגבורתך ידברו.
להודיע לבני אדם גבורותיו, וכבוד אדם מלכותו.
מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור.
שמח אדוני לכל הנופלים, זוקף לכל הכפופים.
עיני כל אליך יסברו, ונתנותם את אוכלם בעיתו.
פותח את ידיך, ומשביע לכל חי רצון.
צדיק אדוני לכל דברכיו, ומחסד מכל מעשיו.
קרוב אדוני לכל קורא, לכל אשר יקראו באמת.
רצון יראה ויעשה, ואת שמתם ישמע ויושיעם.
שמר אדוני את כל אוהביו, ואת כל הרשעים ישפיל.
תהילה לאדוני לדבר פי, ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד, ואנחנו נברך יה, מעתה ועד עולם, hallelujah.
Take a moment to remember friends and family who are ill, who are in hospital, or who suffer this Shabbos. If there's someone you're close to who is sick, then keep them in your thoughts now. And remember to go and see them and to share with them all of your love and all of your strength. Pray for their well-being and their recovery and their return soon to the community of their family and friends. Mishaberach Avotenu Avram Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarifcha Leah, Hu Yivarech v'Yirpeh Kol HaCholim B'Kilatenu HaKdosha. May you who blessed our ancestors at the sea and in the desert, bless all those we love who are ill this Shabbos. May God keep them in mind and help us to keep them in mind and raise them from sickness to health, from suffering to well-being, from being hurt to being at peace, and return them soon to the bonds of family and friendship, of community and life. And let us say together, Amen. The service for returning the Torah, page 153, we rise all together. As the Torah is returned to the ark, those who are honored to open the ark, please come forward so that they may return the Sefer Torah. Go around this way, but try to go quicker. Long lunch. Follow that man. Yes. Everywhere he goes, you go for the rest of your
life. Hallelujah, Mizmor David, Havul Adonai, Benehelim, Havul Adonai, Kavod Evaos, Havul Adonai, Kevod Shemot, Ishtachavul Adonai, Ve'adir Adkovod, Kol Adonai Lamayim, Ela Kavod Yirim Adonai Lamayim Rabbi, Kol Adonai, Koach, Kol Adonai beyadar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, vayishover Adonai, Tarzei halevanon, vayan gidem, kemoi gel, levanon v'siriyovon, כמו בן רביב, כל אדוני חוצב לעבודש, כל אדוני יחיל מדבר, יחיל אדוני מדבר קדש, כל אדוני יכולל הירון, ויחסוך ירון, ויחלו כולו מרכבות, אדוני למבוא לישב, וישב אדוני מלך לעולם, אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום, אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. ישראל, ישראל, ויורית חדו, ישראל, ישראל, ויורית חדו, תורה אורה, הללויה, תורה אורה, תורה אורה, hallelujah, ora, 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 hallelujah, ora, 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 hallelujah, oh, benuchom. כי לקחתו ונתתי לכם תורתי, תורתי. אל תעזוב
Please be seated. I want to just take a moment, and it'll be not more than a moment. Shh, come sit. Rabbi Hillel, the great godfather of the rabbinic tradition, taught in a very famous dictum, Imenani limili, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? Now, he taught that in a very interesting moment. Hillel lived at the height of the Roman Empire when Roman power ruled Jerusalem. If there ever was a moment when the Jewish people had a right to say, I am for myself and for myself alone, it would have been that moment. If he had just said, Im einani li mili, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me, and stopped there, it would have been completely understandable. It would have been completely justified morally. A people crushed under oppression, tortured, pursued, brutalized by Roman power had a right to say, I am for myself and for myself alone, and that's the sum total of my moral mission in the world. But Hillel understood what it means to be human. Is not just to be, but to be something, to be for something, to stand for something. This week, in addition to the events of yesterday, the beginning of the week, we celebrated a unique and interesting coincidence. Monday was the 45th yahrzeit of the philosopher Abraham Joshua Heschel, and it was also the 88th birthday of Martin Luther King. These two men were friends. They were very close because they understood what it means to be human. Heschel taught to be a human being, one must strive to be more than a human being. To be a human being is not just a matter of survival. To be a people is not just a matter of survival, of security and prosperity, but it's to be a matter of aspiration as well, to be reaching for something greater, something bigger, something more universal, something more profound. And so Hillel added a second line. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, if my vision stops at the end of my nose, if my concern ends at the tips of my fingers, if I can't embrace more than myself and reach higher than myself, then what am I? Then what does it mean to be human? Then what does it mean to be a people? Then what does it mean to have a soul? I listened carefully to the president's speech yesterday, and I agreed with him. You're going to find that surprising, but I agreed with him. I think it is a legitimate expression of American self-interest to say America first. I think it is legitimate to say it is time to protect our own prosperity and our own security and our own interests in the world. I think that is a legitimate voice and a legitimate pursuit of interest in this country. Given the upheavals of globalization of economy, and given the upheavals of globalization of culture, it is not illegitimate to say America first. That is a voice that needs to be heard, and I understand that voice, and I don't condemn that voice. Im ein ani li mili. If we're not for ourselves, well, no one's going to be for us. But I was waiting to hear the other voice, and I'm still waiting. Ukeshani rak la'atzmi ma'ani. But if we're only for ourselves, what are we? The other voice of American democracy has always been a voice that stood for principle, that reached across the world to protect the freedom and the human rights of people across the world. In my reading of American history, that's what makes America great. The only country in the world that went to war again and again and again, not for our own interests, but to protect the principle of democracy and human dignity for people that are not related to us, because we're not just for ourselves, because we recognize that the blessings that have come to us, blessings of prosperity, blessings of power, blessings of security, the blessings of this country were given us in trust so that they might be used to pursue great visions and great dreams. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? That's a legitimate voice. America first, but not America only. To be an American, to love this country, to abide by its democracy, to hold dear its being, is to reach into the world and pursue visions and ethics greater than ourselves. If I'm only for myself, who will be for me? What will I be? What kind of a nation will we be? Someone asked me a moment ago, are you going to say a prayer for the new president? Indeed I am. Lord God, we are a great and powerful country, and we are grateful for the gifts of this country. I am grateful that my grandparents came here, and gave me a gift that no Jewish generation up till mine has ever had. I have grown up, and I have raised my own children without ever having to fear a knock at the door in the middle of the night. The only generations of the Jewish diaspora that can say that. I am grateful for this country and all of its power and all of its security and all of its gifts. Master of the world, I am also aware that I am responsible as an American, that we are responsible as a nation to pursue the values that you have taught us in Torah, the values of human dignity, the values of the preciousness of human beings, the values of the equality of human beings, of people of every kind and every color and every background. Open the hearts of our leaders. Open the heart of our president to understand what we stand for and what we struggle for, what really makes us great. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, I am so diminished from what I might yet be. Rabbi Shalom, Master of the world, open the hearts of our president to understand the true greatness that you have taught us to be. Amen. We rise together and share the prayers of Musaf on page 155. Brichot.
Magin Abraham, Uvoket Sarah, Atagi Boreolam Adonai, Mechayim, Himata, Yav Elioshia, Machim Haruach, Umolida Gashem, Mechalchel Chagim Bechesed. Zoemeno Elime Verochecho Elime, Matira Sorim, O Mechayim, Emunado, Ishene Achar. Al-Gemurot, Nubi, El-Veni, O Mechayim, Uvaziach, Tejor V'neman, Atov, Liachayot, Adonai, Michael, Hamekim, Yom Bidi Bidi Bye, Yom Bidi Bidi Bye, Ay, 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 Yom Bidi Bidi Bye. Ay, 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 Yom Bidi Bidi Bye, Yom Bidi Bidi Bye. Ay, 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 harfei kodesh amar shimcha hakodesh kakatu al yad neviyecha vikara zeh yamir yivai כתוב על יד נביאךו וכרזל זה ואמר קדוש קדוש Baruch kivod Adonai, Hameyachadim Shemot Erev Vavoker Bechol Yom Tamid Erev Vavoker Bechol Yom Tamid Pamayim Yavo Shemot Omerim Shema נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים קדושך נגיד איש ברוחך אלוהינו יפנו יום ושלום ועד כי אלוהים מלך גדול וקדוש אתה ברוך אתה הקדוש תיקן תושב
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's a busy Shabbos. Yeah. Oof. As you finish your prayers, you're welcome to be seated. We'll continue with the cantor on page 181.
ישראל, בגלל מלכוני וימרו, אמן, יהי שמי רבה מבורך. רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן אין כאלוהינו אין כאדוננו אין כמלכנו אין כמושיענו אלוהינו מיכאלנו מיכאל מלכנו מיכמושיענו נודל אלוהינו נודל אדוננו נודל מלכנו נודל מושיענו ברוך אלוהינו ברוך אדוננו ברוך מלכנו ברוך מושיענו אתה הוא אלוהינו אתה הוא אדוננו אתה הוא מלכנו אתה הוא מושיענו אתה הוא שכתירו אבותינו לפניך את גדולת הסמדים עלינו לשבח אדוני שלא עזרנו כגויים על עצמות ולא שמענו כמשפחות תורתך שלא הזמנו בשמיים ממעל שכינתו בגובי אלוהים הוא אלוהינו אלוהי מלכנו וזולתו ככתוב ודור ידו וידעתו היום וישיבותך אל לבבך כי אדוני Adonai Yimelech leolam vaed ve'evar Golare hayom hahu Yeh Adonai echad u'shemo
There are those among us this Shabbos who remember loved ones, who recall them and hold their souls dear. The words of the Mourner's Kaddish found on page 184 in the prayer book. We invite those who recite Kaddish to please remain standing. It's a custom in our community that if you find yourself sitting near someone who's standing up alone, we'll ask that you stand with them so that no one grieves or mourns alone when friends and community are present. This week, our community notes with the deepest sadness the passing of Robert Wiviet, husband of Sharon, father of Fran and Ernie Wish, Jay and Teresa Wiviet, Greg Wiviet, and grandfather of 11 remarkable kids. The Wiviet family is with us this morning. We welcome you and offer you all of our hearts and our prayers as you remember Bob's remarkable life and hope that his energy and his strength and his good humor and all that was wonderful in his life remains part of yours forever. Thank you for coming to be with us. We remember Etty Sack, wife of Ivor Sack, mother of David and Claudia Sack, Michael and Karen Sack, Stefan and Nikki, and Renee Sack, sister of Wolfie and of Dora, a grandmother of 6. The Sack family is commemorating memory in San Diego. We wish them our prayers as well. And we note the passing of Doris Iskin, longtime member of the synagogue, wife of Jack Iskin, mother of Eric and Suzanne and Joanne Iskin, grandmother of 4. Services for Mrs. Iskin will be private, but if you know Rick and Suzanne or Joanne, please reach out to them and wish them our love and our support. We want to welcome Moshe Bushinsky back to our community, together with Claudia and your kids. We remember your family with great love. Hope that you find great support and strength here. As well, we want to welcome the Gill family, remembers their brother Ron, and pray that his memory is a blessing to you. Memorial service for Ron will be held tomorrow, 4 p.m. right here. And anyone in the community that would stand with the community, stand with the Gill family, is invited to return and to come with us as well. You'll find the names of all of those whose yard sites are commemorated, listed in the synagogue program. We pray that their memory is a blessing to all who call them close. The words of Kaddish, Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chaye echon uv'yom echon uv'chaye dechal Beit Yisrael. Ba'agalau v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam ol me'olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha b'rechu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba min Shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, huyaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. We hope that you find peace and strength in the embrace of this community and in the words of our tradition. Please be seated. We want to wish everyone Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Valley Beth Shalom this beautiful inaugural weekend. The president-elect sends his regrets that he's not able to be with us. His daughter, of course, is Orthodox. She's next door. But the president-elect had planned to be with us this Shabbos, and, national security got in the way. But we want to wish him a mazel tov and yasher koach, and that he should grow into the job. We want to welcome the Amatiam and Shoham families who celebrate Shabbat Chatan of this wonderful couple. We pray that you return to this synagogue, can I say it, with children, and someday with children's children, to sit with your families are sitting and to celebrate numerous simchas with us. May your lives be filled with light and with joy and with goodness. Bring her flowers once in a while, please. And many blessings to you. We want to thank you for sharing Kiddush. Kiddush this afternoon. Luncheon will be up the hallway, and it's provided by the Shalom and Kamir and Matian families. And we thank you so much, and we wish you Mazel Tov and many more simchas together. Mazel Tov. We'd like to welcome Brother Sean McClintock, who is now part of this community, his wife Rory and kids and family. Brother Sean, may you find a home here. May you celebrate many sweet moments. May you continue to rescue and care for the people you love and the people who call upon you. May your heart, your soul, your body be strong and your mind always be clear and welcome. It's a privilege to count you as a brother. Thank you for being with us. Mazel tov to you. And to everyone who celebrates Simchas, we welcome all of you. We want to thank Cantor Fox. Where's Cantor Fox? Cantor Fox. There he is. The invisible Cantor Fox, right? Chris Harden on the piano. Last night, if you happened to get through the rain and the hail and the mud and the earthquakes and the tornadoes and the lice and the locusts, there was a wonderful concert of Sephardic music offered by our musician in residence, Asher Levy, and his father, Rabbi Jay Levy. Beautiful music. We'll be doing this again. It was a marvelous evening, and to you, Yasher Koch, and thank you so very much. This afternoon, following our service in this room, there is Kiddush lunch. Where? Down the hall. Smell the blintzes, right? Follow the sniff. And everyone is invited in honor of the Shabbat Chatan to come and join us for a wonderful celebration of Shabbat. It is now 12:15. In 25 minutes, which will make it 20 minutes to 1. 20 minutes to 1. We have a wonderful opportunity. Please meet Jill Epstein, who's here from Newton, Massachusetts. Jill is a noted author, a novelist, a storyteller, and she has created a marvelous book of the wisdom from her mom. It's called Lessons from Our Mothers. If you had a mother or have a mother or are a mother or would like to become a mother, this is a beautiful opportunity to learn with a great storyteller. Please join us in the Weiner Chapel in 2025. Time enough to get a blintz. And join us in the Weiner Chapel for an opportunity to meet a wonderful author and to share her wisdom. As well, I'd like to tell you that tomorrow at 3 o'clock here at VBS, we're going to be welcoming Dr. Micha Goodman of the Hartman Institute in Jerusalem, who's going to be speaking about Israel's secular community. Everyone is invited to that lecture. When you get to the door, whisper to the door person that you're a member of Valley Beth Shalom. You'll save yourself a few dollars. And on Wednesday night, we continue College of Jewish Studies, our examination of Israel since 1967. And our speaker this week is the renowned Dr. Amir Hussein, professor of religion at Loyola Marymount, who will be talking about how Islam has changed since 1967. As well, we wish everyone a really wonderful, warm, and sweet Shabbos. Ask everyone to please rise together. Embrace those beside you and bring them close. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Hoy Shabbat, Shabbat. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat. Katie. Relative of yours? No? Savri. Baruch. Baruch. Amoid. Shabbos.
Adon olam asher malach, b'terem kol